Well, I'm going to be getting some of my early seeds ready. G'day there, I'm Dana from Pewakaka Valley Homestead. Today is an exciting day. I am going to be getting the very first of my spring seeds into some seedling trays and move them around into my seed house so I can have some plants when the frosts go away. I have put together some mini videos on a few different specific types of plants, but these are mostly greens. There's some brassicas, some lettuce, some beets. I can't remember what else I've got here. Cabbages, broccoli, and my onions. So these are all sown in the same method. Basically, have a tray, put some potting mix in it, sprinkle the seeds on, lightly dust them with a little more potting mix. And I bottom water mine, but anyway, mist them or bottom water them, get them damp somehow, and put them somewhere and wait for them to grow. So that's what I'm going to be doing. The very first thing you're going to need is some potting mix or some seed raising mix, and this is the one I have started using. It's a Dalton's organic mix. In previous years I have definitely used cheaper wood-based potting mixes, and honestly I've never had great success. So this year I have splashed out and I am buying the fancier stuff, and we'll see how much of a difference it makes. It's definitely a lot looser, it's a lot more free draining, so hopefully it will give my plants a much better start. So the first thing I'm going to be planting are my onions. So they are going into just a flat tray because they will be replanted out pretty smartly once they're up and growing. They don't need to be in individual cell trays. So I'm putting about maybe 1.5 inches of soil in here. Now this year we're going to be growing a lot more of our own food, and so that means I'm going to be giving a go growing all my own onions, which to be honest I've not managed before. These are the sweet Spanish ones. We've got sweet Spanish, Italian long keeping, and red Brunswick. Now onion seeds are really quite small and black, and I'm going to be trying to do half a tray of each. Onion seeds you can sow quite thickly, because once they come up looking like grass, that's when you split them up and sow them into your actual garden. You know, pull them all apart and put them into your garden beds. Now the reason I'm doing two different long keeping white onions is, quite honestly, it's a bit of an experiment to see which one grows better. So they're sprinkled all over the top, and then I'm just going to give them a light dusting of extra potting mix over the top. Now this is purely to help keep the seeds from drying out while they're sprouting. Once they've sent a root down to the bottom, they'll be fine. Pop in the all-important labels and firm the soil down. While seeds need a loose mix, they also need firm contact with the soil, and this will ensure much more even germination and a lot less likely of them to die off from dehydration. So there we go, that's my onions. And for the red onions I'm just going to do a smaller pot of those, because red onions don't store as well and we tend to eat them fresh. Now for everybody else, I've got these 50 cell trays that fit within my flats that I've got. So I'm just going to be doing all my greens and things into these. Same deal, fill them with some soil and then tamp them down. And the first thing I'm going to do is just a tray completely of lettuce, just a mixture of all different kinds. I usually put 1 or 2 seeds in each hole, especially with these lettuces that are sort of cut and come again style. They do get planted a lot closer together. And then same deal, just a little sprinkling of compost over the top. Potting mix, sorry. And just firm it down. Right, and this one I'm going to mostly do my brassicas. So there, your cabbage, broccoli, kale, those sorts of things. Perfect to grow in springtime while the weather's still a little bit cooler. A worm. I don't like to overfill these seed containers, partly because it's a bit of a waste of mix, and partly because it increases the likelihood of, when you water them, of the seeds drifting and being in the wrong spot. I've got some sea kale, which I've got some seeds for, which I'm quite excited about, so I'll give those a go as well. I've got some red cabbage, an empty label, some green cabbage, some broccoli, and some kale. And because brassicas have really tiny seeds, they barely need covered at all. You can just press them into the top of the soil if you like. And I try and only do 1, maybe 2 in each cell. It just saves having to waste seeds later. I know that's a little bit stingy, but it also saves work. It means I don't have to go through and thin them out. If you're not sure how many to grow for your family, I have a really good resource, which I will put a link to down in the description below, of how many plants per person of each variety you should be growing, which is a great place to start. Obviously, if your family likes certain food, then you'll need to grow more of it, and if they can't stand certain food, don't grow it. But it's a good place to start knowing just how many of each variety to grow. With the brassicas, notoriously I have troubles and arguments with mice that try and eat them. So often I will sprinkle the top with a really hot chili powder, and I have found that generally speaking that's enough to deter the mice long enough for the plants to actually grow. The other thing I have got is one of those scarers that makes a funny noise. I can't hear it, but the kids can, and apparently it keeps the mice away. I don't know if it works or not, but we have one. Now this is sea kale. It's quite different to a normal kale. And it's a perennial crop. It's a lot harder to get hold of, so I've actually had to import these seeds from the UK. So I'm hoping they will grow. And then again, just a light dusting of the potting mix over the top. Now you'll notice, I don't know if you saw that, but I planted the sea kale quite a bit deeper because the seeds are quite a bit bigger. So generally speaking, you plant a seed 2 to 3 times as deep as it is wide. So the really little seeds you can just put pretty much just on the surface and just tamp them in. Bigger seeds need a little bit more of a hole and a little bit more of a covering. I have a lot of beetroot seeds because I accidentally ordered the massive bag one day. And they're quite large. I'm going to do the Charles Dowding method of multi-sowing each cell, partly because it takes up less seed raising space, and partly because I'm lazy and it's a lot faster. And these little parcels I got from a local seed saving library, which is, I think, an absolutely brilliant idea. So the idea is that everybody sort of grows a plant and saves a seed and sends it back in. And to get seeds, all you have to do is send them a self-addressed envelope, which I think is a fantastic idea. If you're like me and like to reuse these 6-cell punnets, one of the fastest way of compacting them down is actually to use one exactly the same size and just push it down on top, and it compacts it really quickly. For those of you that are interested, I'll show you how my tomatoes that I sowed the other week are growing and how my propagation table's going. That my tomatoes have all come up. I sowed them, to be honest, I think it was about 3 weeks ago now. So they've grown quite well. They're probably about ready to pot on. And some of my chilies have started to come up too. These are on a heated table, so they are getting a bit of a head start. I think the table's set at about 30 degrees Celsius, which I think's 65 or no, maybe 70 degrees Fahrenheit. Now my cats keep coming in here to my propagation table and sitting on top of the plants, which is really annoying. These things over the back that haven't been set on are doing really, really well. These Chilean guavas are doing really well. And this perennial kale is just going great guns. It's ready to pot outside, I think. You can see its roots sticking out the bottom already. The roses all come up with new flush growth. The currants have started growing. It's exciting. Right, now we've got all these trays with seedlings in them that I'm going to move around to the seed raising house and give a wee bit of a water and tuck them in. Oh, here they are, sitting in the seed house. I'm just going to pop some water into the bottom trays so that they can wick it up from the bottom. That saves displacing the seeds from the top and will help them keep nice and moist. The other upside to bottom watering is it actually wastes a lot less water, which we're on tank water, so that's quite key for us. And then I'll just shut the door and they'll be nice and warm in there. The seed house faces north, which for us is where we get all our sun, but it does lose the sun in the late afternoon when it gets a little bit too hot, so hopefully this will be a good wee spot for it. So I was just heading inside and I realised I forgot to say some key things that you probably need to know, so I'll probably put this near the beginning of the video rather than at the end. I forget that not everybody knows how to sow their own garden, and I forget that not everybody has sown seeds before. My dog's whining and I don't know why. So sowing your own seeds is a great way, obviously, to get a wider variety of plants than what you probably would necessarily be able to buy as transplants from the store. The other upside to growing your own seeds is, of course, that it's a lot cheaper. For your $3.50 or whatever, you can buy a whole pack of 50 to 100, maybe even sometimes 200 seeds, as opposed to 6 transplants for the garden. To get the best growth out of your seeds, you're probably best to get yourself some actual seed raising mix. I have used cheap potting mix in the past, and honestly I have found that the seed raising mix is actually worth paying that little bit more for. Your plants do a lot better, they grow faster, you have less dampening off or fungal issues, so generally speaking it's just that little bit better. However, seeds will grow in most medium, so if you can't afford it, just do what you can with what you've got. Baby seeds need 3 main things. They need light, they need water, and they need nutrients. So if you've got the right soil, you've got them somewhere nice and bright. If you don't have somewhere bright, either inside or in a seed raising house or in a tunnel house, something like that, you can start them in a cold frame outside. It depends what time of year it is. If you're still getting frost, they need the protection and they need the extra warmth to germinate. Once they've germinated, then you can start transitioning them slowly to being outside in the colder air. There are very few plants that will actually germinate while you're still having frosts. Peas are one of them. Broad beans or fava beans are another one. But other than that, most things will not start germinating and won't start growing. Oh, garlic. My garlic's growing. It's all about 3 inches high. But generally speaking, things won't start growing until your frosts have at least settled down quite a lot, if not stopped completely. So if you're wanting, I'm sorry, can you hear my neighbour's tractor? It's really loud. He's just by the fence line. If you're wanting to get a head start on your seeds, you need somewhere sheltered, warm, and sunny for them to get growing. In previous years I've set up a plastic table inside our window and just put some plastic down on the ground and grown them in my lounge. Last year I grew them in my tunnel house, which worked really well, but this year I've got greens on the ground in the tunnel house, so I can't use that either. That's why I've built myself this seed raising house, and it's literally just a couple of shelves surrounded in plastic. So don't go crazy, do what you can with what you've got. If you're just growing a few seeds, just put them on your windowsill or on your bench or anywhere that's sort of warm and sunny. And then the other thing you need to do is keep them moist, not soaking wet. If they're soaking wet, you'll end up with rotting problems. Just moist, which usually means watering them every couple of days or so. If they're in the direct heat of the sun, you may need to water them every day, but just play it by ear. If you touch the top of the surface and your finger comes away clean and dry, then it probably needs a wee bit of moisture. If you touch the surface and your finger comes away with wee bits of potting mix stuck to it and it's still moist, then don't worry about it, you can leave it until tomorrow. As for containers for growing seeds in, you can pretty much grow seeds in whatever you have. I've grown them in yogurt bottles, ice cream containers, Dixie cups, all sorts of things. I often reuse the 6-cell punnets that you can get transplants in. I pick those up often just on local Facebook groups or different places. We have a free cycle group that I've asked for them on and people have given them to me. They're unfortunately not recyclable, although I have seen some more recently that are, but generally especially the older ones, aren't recyclable. So if you can reuse them, that's obviously better than them going to the tip. So and the other option is to buy something specifically for it, which I guess is probably the last option. I have brought a few, but this is the first year out of 15 years I've been growing our own seeds, and this is the first year I've actually bought some flats of my own to start them in. So it's certainly not necessary. You can just use what you have. If you think you need more help knowing about growing stuff in the garden or wanting to grow your own food, I have a brilliant book that I've put together. It's called The Homesteaders Guide to Seasonal Eating, and it will tell you week by week what you need to be doing in the garden, what things are good for harvesting, how to preserve stuff, and also some seasonal recipes as well. So you can check that out in the link below. I hope you found this video useful. If you have, hit the like button. Consider subscribing to our channel. We bring you videos twice a week on growing and preserving your own food. We'll see you in the next one.